Welcome back to the studio. In this final video for our snowman piece, we are going to do the finishing details. And this is really my favorite part. At this part, I know that the hard part is done. Now I can just come in and finalize a couple of the last little details, really making sure that everything that I wanted to capture is on my piece. So let's have some fun and finish our snowman. Here is our snowman. He is all ready for some final details. I'm going to go ahead and mix up a little bit more of this gray that we used on him because I'm going to want to be able to bring some of that in as I add some whites. So I'm going to start out with a 10-inch brush. I think that, sorry, not a 10-inch brush. I'm going to start out with a 10-inch size filbert brush, and I'm going to just come back in and mix some of this gray that we had before. And I can just come right back over the top of this dried area. Add in a little bit of the titanium white, and I hope that you can see on my palette how I'm leaving that not over mixed. So it's kind of darker to the side, and as I add more titanium white, it gets a little bit lighter, but there's lots of variations. I know that I'll say that a lot, but it is nice to not over mix your paints. Leave some of that happening. So I'm going to come in, have a little bit of that dark in my brush, which is fine. I'll actually wipe that out and set it back in. With these, with the liquid acrylics that we're using here from Golden, they're, you can't really build up the texture that you can with, like if you were using the heavy body paints. So it's going to take you just a couple of times of coming back with the lights again to get this as bright as we want the snowman to be. So I laid in a little bit of that titanium white, and now I'm just taking the brush and just running it along the edge of that white. I don't mind the brush strokes there. I like how some of those look, so don't overwork it, but you can see how you can begin to, even though this gray is completely dry, you can begin to make some of that brighter white come in. I'm going to make this gray just a tad bit more blue. So I just barely tapped into into a little bit of that the phthalo blue there. It still looks a little bit grayer than I want. I'm going to tap into just the tiniest bit more. That's better. It always is, anytime that you mix paints, when you take the first few strokes of it with your brush, assess the color, see if it's right. If it's not, adjust it a tiny bit. So now I'm going to pick up a bit more of the titanium white and bring a little bit more of this highlight down on his arm. I'm going to blot out my brush and then just run the basically clean brush along the edges there. I don't want it to get too light up here by his scarf, so I'll tap back down into that shadow color that we mixed and touch that in. So I'm just going to keep working on these highlights. The one thing that I do want to bring up is I feel like I need a little bit of a round over here for the other part of his body. This isn't etched in, and it's not necessary to do, but with just picking up a little bit of that shadow color that we just made and running it from maybe right around where this edge of the scarf is, just letting it circle down, kind of brings his shape together very, very easily. And then I can come in with some white. This is the shadow side of him, so I don't want to let it get too light over here. And again, this part of his body down here will be a little bit more shadowed because it's sort of under his arm. So once I set in the white, I can just pick up a little bit of that shadow color again, and then blot out my brush, use a little airbrush medium, and come back in and run the brush between those colors. I lost a little bit more of that shadow than I wanted, so I'll just set it back in. So I'm going to keep working on building the highlights on the snowman. I'm going to fast forward from here so that you can see how it all comes together. Okay, I'm gonna call our piece done. I hope that you could see a few of the little details that I went in to add. I added a little bit more pink in the berries just to let them come to life just a little bit. I'm gonna touch some red back in them. You could even, if you wanted to, give them a little dot of shine. Just a little touch. They're so tiny. If you get too much shine, of course, just go back to the pink. The pink that I mixed up here is mostly the pyrrole red, a tiny bit of quinacridone magenta, and titanium white. Yeah, he looks really cute. I did come back in and just add a few more pops of that bright red pyrrole red that you saw me add in that fast forward. I just let it be a little bit sketchy along this ribbon up here and just tapped in some spots on the scarf too to brighten some areas. With acrylic paints, the layering of paint coming back in and adding some of those layers is the magic. That's the trick. I added a little bit of pink to the cardinal, just a little bit of highlight. And you could just you could keep playing with it for forever. What else did I want to say before we finish? A couple of extra things. If you get, as Lucy comes in to visit, if you get to the end of adding the highlights into your snowman and you feel like it's a little bit too, thank you, Lucy. Yes, you're welcome to, yes, please sit right there. That's perfect. As you get to the end, if you feel like the snowman just isn't as smooth as you would like it to be, do a little bit of titanium wash glaze. So a glaze is just, again, that thinned out paint. Using the airbrush medium there, you could certainly use just water if you want. So just really control the amount of paint that's in your brush and come back in and go over some of the areas. Because it's so thinned out, it will really be transparent. It will leave some of your shadows really showing. Use a lot of your brush in most of these places where you really press down on the brush to pull that glaze across. And with this titanium white, you may want to let this dry at this point and come back in and add another bit of that brightest white on the top. You won't really be able to see how much, if any, of that you need until it dries a little bit. And like I mentioned, until you spend a little bit of time with it where you're standing back from it and looking at it from a little bit of a distance. This darker line that I added here, that line really stands out to me. I don't really like it. So what I'm going to do is that very same glaze that we just talked about, I'm just going to go right over the whole thing. Then I'm going to blot out the brush and run the brush along that edge again. So at this point, take a picture of it with your phone and look at it in the picture. I don't know what it is about seeing it in a picture. It does just make everything a little bit more clear. It's a little mind trick that the picture plays on you. But I love taking pictures of my pieces to just see if there's anything that I'm missing or anything else that I want to add in. You saw me a little bit there with the thinned out black. Go back in and add just a little more detail to the tops of his eyes. I cleaned up at the mouth a little bit. Just be careful when you're thinning out your paint that you don't let it get thin enough that it puddles. So you want it to be inky consistency, but not too watery. If it kind of puddles up on your surface of your substrate, then you'll know it's got just a little bit too much water. So the last thing that I would do to this piece is sign it. And I have a little artist mark that I use. I don't like my signatures to be very large. I don't like them to distract. So I'm going to use a black Posca pen. This is an acrylic pen. I love these. And I'm just going to make my little artist signature down here. Not really a signature so much as an artist mark. If it shows up too much, if you don't like how dark it is, again, we can let it dry and come back in and glaze over it with a little bit of that sky color to set it in. But I'll spend a little bit of time with it and decide, make a decision on what I think that it needs. So that's it. That's our very first everyday art playlist complete. I have a beautiful piece. I'm going to be displaying this in my kitchen on a little display easel. I think that people just really love to decorate with these small pieces, and they're wonderful gifts, of course, amazing to sell. So I hope that you'll try it. I hope that you will post a picture. Try not to let the lights blow it out too much. I hope you'll post a picture of yours so that I can see your completed snowman. It's such a fun piece to do. And be sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel so that you get a notification when a new class is loaded and ready for you to paint.